Hello and welcome to Design, Engineer, and Build. Today we're going to build some landscape lights. Criteria that I used to build these were that it had to be easy to reproduce, materials easily found, it had to be economic, and because of my previous experience with commercial landscape lighting, I have hopefully engineered a lot of the shortcomings from that. So if you stick with me, I'll show you initially the lights that I found that we're going to be using for the build, and then we'll move on to the build. These are my Sun V lights. As you can see, the mounting screws are in the front. I've taken the screws out of the back so you can see the inside. But it's an all metal case. Both the front and the back are metal case. Wiring exits out the rear, and there is a nice silicone gasket there to keep it waterproof. Real happy with these. Now that you've seen the lights that I'm going to use, there's a few other products that we need to shop for, and I'll show you exactly what you need. For the lights, to mount that light on, the pedestal, I'm using a 4 by 6 inch treated piece. The pedestals that I'm making are 18 inches tall, so depending on how many lights you are going to be using, multiply that out. I am going to be making 12 of these today, so multiply that out, I get about 18 feet. I bought two 10-footer 4 by 6, which are on the floor here. You probably can't see them, that I'll be using. I also went to the metal store. If you saw from the initial picture on the introduction, there's a little metal cap or a top. I got some 1/8 inch aluminum at the metal store, and that cap measures 8 inches wide, 7 inches from front to back. This is where the 4 by 6 will sit on the top. It gives about a 1-inch border along the edge, and this is just acts like a little ball cap or a little weather screen for that light, and that'll sit right over the light. So I got a piece about 30 inches by 30 inches for those 12 lights. There's a cavity in the back that we're going to do our wiring. So I got 12 plates, just blank plates, plastic. And then to attach those, I got stainless steel, number 6, 3/4 inch screws to accommodate that. For the light itself, I think I mentioned that I wasn't sure I was going to use those lights or the screws that came with it. So I got some number 6 1.25 inch stainless screws for that. I got some regular wire nuts for wiring, since we'll be using a little bit more of a non-traditional landscape lighting wire connection, as it will be out of the weather and in this cavity in the back of the pedestal. And we'll get into that. These particular wire nuts accommodate 3 12-gauge wires, and that should be perfect for our application. The other thing that I did get is 2 10-foot pieces of 1/2 inch re-rod, and that should be available at the building center as well. And that is what you're going to be sticking in the ground. This is the bottom of the pedestal. Both of these will accommodate the re-rod. These holes are about 3 inches deep, and I'm going to cut the re-rod at 8 inches, so you're going to have a 5-inch spike, two 5-inch spikes on either side, one on either side of the pedestal, to help that stand up straight. And I think that's about it. So let's move on. For the pattern on the top, I used file paper, as it's stiff enough and to hold a pattern for a length of time that's repeatable. So I've cut a piece of file paper the same width as my 4 by 6 that I'm going to be using as my pedestal for my light, and fold it in half and just draw in a gentle curve on there. I'll cut that out and we'll lay that across the front of the 4 by 6 as our top or roof. to our light. This, of course, is the file paper after it's being cut. And just aesthetically, if you want to take a peek and see what it's going to look like, set your thing on there. And if that's enough for you, that's perfect. If it's not, make adjustments. Now's the time to do that, as all the rest of them will be the same if you use this as a pattern for your light. Now, since I have drawn a line around my pattern, I've taken my square, drawn a center line. 1.5 inches down is where my first screw of my light will be going. And the other screws are 2.5 inches from that vertically. So that'll be at 4 inches. Using a small nail, I put that through the top of the template that was given with the lights. I ran a line between the two centers, squared that up with my square, and then we can mark those holes for attachment. And then one additional hole that we'll have to use is to run the cord from the front to the back and into where we're going to wire it all, which is about 3 1/8 down from the top hole. It's going to be right about there. So we'll mark that, and then I think we're pretty much set to drill. First hole drilled, I drilled for the cable that comes from the light, which sits here, back through to the back. Now it won't be exiting there. I'll take a Forstner bit now, using a 2.5 inch Forstner bit to cavitate this area a little bit, and that'll be up next. So now I've connected this to my vise, and I've made some measurements on the front face, and this is the bottom edge. I've got a 1/2 inch extended bit, about a 12-inch long bit, and if we're careful and lucky, we'll come all the way down to this pocket here at the bottom of the piece. And this is where our wiring is all going to take place down here. So now if you look closely, we've got our hole started in the back, 1/2 inch, runs all the way down the 4x6, exit right inside this cavity, and then of course the hole that we made earlier, the 5/16, that'll run from the light into this cavity as well. So in addition, on the bottom, I'm going to drill 2 additional holes, and I marked those 1 inch in from the outside and centered those, one on either side. Again with a 1/2 inch hole, and I just marked my bit, which is some painter's tape at 3 inches. So I have it doesn't have to be that accurate, but just a stop for myself. Now you may be wondering about the curved top. It certainly makes it a lot easier with the squared top to measure all these holes. So now we'll just cut the rounded top on the bandsaw. Now that you see that we've cut the curved top on the pedestal, let's get to the metal piece, and I'll show you how that was done with the aluminum that I got earlier today. Once I cut that aluminum out from the sheet into 7 by 8 inch pieces, I made a pattern of that same size, rounded off the top, rounded off the back corners, and again, this is where the 4x6 pedestal sits. And that's what we'll use as our pattern to cut those out. Now that you've seen all these 7 by 8 inch pieces of aluminum cut out, I did take and stack them all together in a pile, and with sanders, file, etc., I approximated all of them to be about the same size. And then to finish them, I'm putting each one individually in my vise using a file just to finish off the final shape, and eventually just a little bit of sandpaper to smooth that out so that you're not going to get injured if you happen to brush up against it out in the landscape. Now I've got those all smoothed out. Go back to our pattern. This is where the 4 by 6 is going to sit. I've got this marked 1 inch in from that edge on either side and centered front to back. And I need to put a screw here, a screw hole here, and a screw hole here that's going to hold that on our pedestal. So you probably realize that I've tried this multiple times. This time I'm just trying with a straight one around this pipe, and that seems to work pretty well, actually. In fact, I get a little bit too much of a bend. So I could probably do with a little bit bigger pipe, but this is what I have for now. And I'm starting the bend kind of on the edge of this in the vise, and just manually, you can get part of it around. And the rest of it I'm using with the rubber mallet, kind of working my way around. And as I come down, adding a little bit more in each time. Little mallet action. And a little bit more. And that seems to be working pretty well, actually. And then I make adjustments after I take this off, do the other side. Make adjustments as compared with my little sample piece here. And we're getting it to work. And here with the form that I had, certainly not perfect. But I think it's going to be more than adequate for this. I think the last thing to finish those tops would be some kind of a texture. And I'm going to leave these silver. You're obviously welcome to paint them if you like, but since it's aluminum, I think it would be nice if we left them natural. Now I tried both a straight wheel, which just gives kind of a satin look to it, and I tried the round wire wheel, and I kind of like that look. So I think that's what I'm going to go with for these, and we'll just put them all through their paces. Now I've temporarily attached the bent pieces to the post that I have, just as my sample piece. Put it in my vise, and then I'll run over it with that wire wheel to put that final finish on. Now, since you've seen all the tops being bent, fitted, and finished, it's about time we put them on. So I've gotten some hex-headed 1¼ inch stainless to keep with my stainless theme and the longevity of the product. And if you want to, you can mark the back with that inch overlay so you know how much it extends out the back. I have done that here and marked my screw holes, and then simply attaching it with these, try that one more time. Simply attaching it with these hex-headed screws, hopefully. In the holes that I had designated. That screw is not going to go in there easily, is it? So that's pretty much the construction of that piece. And then if we lay it on its back, again extend it in the vise, we can apply the light to the front. I've marked the top light, which again, 1.5 inches from the top, the 2 horizontal screw holes that are about 4 inches down from that. And then again, keeping with the theme of stainless, I have my 1.25 inch stainless Phillips head screws, and I've got those marked to where I want to put those in. Extend your wire through the hole that you've already drilled in the front, and then just simply attach the screws. That would be it. And now on to the wiring. If you've done wiring with landscape lights before, it's all pretty basic, except the exception here is that we're wiring within this cavity in the back. Just as an example, I've got just a short piece of 14 gauge wire, stiff enough that it won't bend inside the hole. And I've taped 2 wires. One would be coming in, one would be going out to your light when you wire them out in the landscape. And then simply pull them up through here. Like such. So now, since I pulled those wires through, I've stripped them all, twisted the ends tight, and tied a knot, or just an overhand little bit of a loop, into each of the wires entering, so as to restrict them coming back through that hole. Then you just take one from each, twist them together, and apply the cap. Certainly, if you got a soldering iron, that would make a even more complete connection, but this is certainly a whole lot better than those ground connections on typical landscape lighting. Then what I did was just tuck this in to the space. I had marked the center, or the holes, marked the holes, and then if we're lucky, put the back on. Oh, we got some sneaking out there. There we go. Oops. Got kind of excited there, I guess. All right, so that makes it nearly waterproof, certainly much more waterproof than you would get with standard lighting. The only thing left, I think, in our design is to apply the anchors to the bottom so you've got something to stick it in the ground with, and I'll be right back with you on that one. Now, if you recall our shopping list, I had purchased 2 10-footers of ReRod 1/2 inch, and that's what's going to stabilize these to the ground. So I cut 8-inch lengths for all of them. And if you recall, but I'm doing a dozen of these. But these will just nail in to the bottom. Through our 1/2-inch holes. And that will stabilize our light. So I think we are just about complete. Again, the light here in the front. Got the wiring coming through. All the wiring in the back covered with the plate. The top that we bent. And then again, showed you the wiring, but the wiring hole here and the 2 stabilized pieces for the bottom. And that is really it. So I hope you enjoyed this, and happy building. Well, that's it for this build, and I appreciate you watching. If you like the content, please subscribe. And I must apologize, I did this over multiple days, and I hope that my wardrobe was not distracting. The best of luck with your build. My next build involves an outdoor cooking device, which, again, based on the quality that's out there, is not available. So I'm hoping that you'll look back in on my site and watch me along with that build. Again, thanks for watching.